Whilst we are aiming to problematize the research ethics process generally, for ease of access we are using Exeter as a case study. Taken from Exeter's ethical guidelines on page 1, and I quote, "Ethical review should not be considered as a tick box exercise or a barrier to research. It is one means by which the university exercises its duty of care to the public, research participants, and researchers. It also helps to protect the reputation of the university." We'd like to ask you then, are non-human animals research participants in the research ethics process?
In the following slides, we are going to examine more closely how animals are considered or overlooked, using an example of a fictional PhD research project to guide this workshop discussion. We present a narrative that is based on experiences that could and do happen to researchers in our field. However, both Adita and her project are fictional. Adita's adventures in Anthrozoology. Adita is a PhD student who has received ethics approval from her university to conduct research involving both humans and endangered ravens in a country which is not her own, nor is her university located there. Once she arrives at her field site, Adita discovers that her human participants are quite reluctant to sign her very official-looking participant forms. Worried about losing their participation, Adita calls her supervisor and asks for advice. "Don't worry," the supervisor says. "If you gain verbal informed consent, you will be fine." Adita realizes that not all her research participants can provide informed consent. What are the ethical issues of not having all participants give consent?
Armed with verbal consent from her human participants, Adita begins her observations of the endangered ravens living amongst the human population. There's a raven family just ahead of her with 2 juveniles, and she pauses to watch. The ravens turn to look at her, and the adults place themselves between Adita and the chicks. Adita moves closer to get a better view of the young, when suddenly she realizes she has not asked the ravens permission to observe their family, nor has she offered them any consent form or listed them on ethics paperwork. How can this be? When planning to visit marginalized humans, the ethics process was intense, protecting especially children and other vulnerable populations. Yet Adita is not asked to refrain from interacting with juveniles of other species, even when the parents are to be upset by the process. Should these animal informants be considered as agents in the ethics process?
Adita is deep in observations when she realizes that her human interlocutors are involved in trafficking her animal informants. The researcher is torn. She doesn't wish to report the crime and see her human informants face a loss of livelihood or prosecution. However, she doesn't want to see wildlife being removed from their habitat, nor suffering at the hands of traffickers. Furthermore, Adita doesn't want to implicate herself by not reporting the crime. What should be Adita's priority? Whose agency is most valuable?
Whilst Adita is in the field, a newspaper back home had asked to write a short piece about her research. In the article, they have included a picture of the ravens. When reading the article online, Adita notices that many comments on the photo include remarks such as, "This bird is beautiful, where can I get one?" What forms of unintentional harm can occur through research dissemination? Should this be included in the ethics process?
Having had this negative experience with newspaper coverage, Adita decides to write about her work on a blog instead, so she can control the types of images used. Adita includes a photograph of an anonymized human participant holding a raven. She blurs the face of the human, but not the raven. So the question is, Should the identities of non-human animals be anonymized in research data?